So in this video, I'm going to talk you through what's normal vomiting and when you should be concerned and consider seeing your vet. My name's Jim Wilshire and I've been a veterinary surgeon for 20 years. I've seen thousands of vomiting dogs and hundreds of interesting things inside them. I know how confusing vomiting can be, so in this video we're going to try and help you make sense of it. So let's start by talking about what's normal vomiting. So that might be strange to say, but in some dogs it may be quite normal for a small amount of vomiting to happen. That can often form around eating too fast, perhaps being stressed or in the car, often drinking too much, or even a change of food. So in our Labradors, we tend to see that after they've been swimming. So they'll go swimming, ultimately they drink too much and they'll vomit. You can recognize signs of nausea. So these will often be lip smacking, constant swallowing, some dribbling, refusal to eat, and just seeming off color. Let's have a look at some of the common causes of abnormal vomiting. So as you find with us, we can pick up bugs and viruses from our peers. The same can happen with dogs. So a simple gastroenteritis can be caused by a virus or a bacteria they catch from other dogs. Probably the most common cause of vomiting we see is what we call dietary indiscretion. So that's a polite way of saying raiding the bin, stealing something off the neighbours, eating something out of the hedge, or in the case of our dogs, it's very often stealing or mugging what the cats have caught. So that will very often cause them to be vomiting. And then finally, we've got what we call foreign bodies. So those are things that they've eaten that don't belong in there. So they can range from stones to Barbie heads to pairs of knickers, through to Lego. It's amazing what you can find in them. And then finally, vomiting can be a symptom of another underlying disease. So for example, pancreatitis or liver or kidney disease will all cause vomiting as one of their symptoms. So if your dog has severe repeated vomiting, it's really, really important we get to the root cause of it, not just treat the symptoms. So if your dog has vomited 2 or 3 times or more in a 24-hour period, then that's probably a sign to be worried. If the vomit is particularly violent as well, or if you see fresh blood or what looks like coffee grounds, so digested blood in the vomit, then those again are red flags. We need to watch out particularly for our young, so our puppies and our old dogs, they'll be especially vulnerable. Or when the vomiting is accompanied with diarrhea and they're unable to keep any fluids down, they're at risk of dehydrating. And then finally, and probably most concerningly, if there's a history of a missing toy or access to human medicines or toxins potentially, then those are things we should really be worried about as well. If we have a vomiting dog at home, what can we do to help them? So I think first up, it's really about making sure you've got an accurate record of the frequency of the vomiting. So when you're chatting to your vet and you're trying to get to the bottom of the root cause, you've got a pattern to hang that around. Sometimes a photo of the vomit or actually a sample can be useful as well. Removing food in an immediate vomiting period, so for 6 to 12 hours, but definitely don't remove water. You can actually consider trying to tempt the dog with some electrolytes or with some warm water or ice cubes potentially to keep them drinking. There's also a few things we shouldn't do. The first and probably the most important is give them any human medicines. And secondly is, particularly during that 6 to 12-hour period, is giving them new foods or treats. We should also try and make sure we're not making the situation any worse by letting them scavenge again. So let's make sure they don't get into the bins or scavenge out of the hedges. With a vomiting dog, it's better to take a better safe than sorry approach. So if your dog suddenly develops another symptom to go with its vomiting, it's a particularly vulnerable individual, so it's a puppy or an elderly dog, or there is that concerning history of a new toy or an old toy that's suddenly gone missing, then I think it's really, really important that you proactively speak to your vet. You don't have to be sure there's something wrong to ask for help. If you reach the point where you're concerned enough to go and see your vet, that will often start with a chat or the clinical history part of the consult. And during that, they're really going to want to know a lot of the stuff we've been through. So when did the vomiting start? How frequent it is? What did it look like? So that's where your records and your pictures can be really, really useful. They're going to want to know what their personality is like. Are they scavengers? Is there a history of a disappearing toy that happens to coincide? And really that moves on to the 3 key parts of a clinical exam for a vomiting dog. So the first is looking at their gums to assess hydration status and their colour. The second is their temperature. And thirdly, and probably most importantly, is a full abdominal palpation. So during this, your vet is going to feel quite closely what's going on in your dog's abdomen, and it's going to be particularly if you're looking for areas that are painful, or even they may even be able to feel a foreign body in some circumstances. And if the vet has concerns, then often that will progress to some blood samples just to check general health parameters, and then probably an X-ray. So remember, vomiting can very often be a symptom of an underlying disease, apart from in the occasions where your dog is a particularly bad scavenger or doesn't react well to diet changes. So if your dog has the sort of scavenging personality or has a history of scavenging, then there are a few things we can do to help. So one is making your bins dog proof, or getting them high enough so your dog can't get to them. If your dog is particularly bad on a walk, then in actual fact, keeping them on a lead, or we've even had dogs that have to wear muzzles on walks to stop them scavenging, can really, really help with that dietary indiscretion. If your dog's perhaps a bit more sensitive to changes, then in actual fact, when you move them onto a new food, transition from one food to another in a slow and controlled manner. So by blending your new food in with your old food. And really, in these cases, try and avoid high-fat treats or leftovers and scraps. Whilst a vomiting dog can be scary, we've been through what's normal, what we can do about it, and hopefully you've got some idea about when you should call your vet and when it's an emergency. To try and help you with this, I've put together a handy checklist of things to look out for in the description. But do remember, if you're ever concerned or worried, then you're better off being safe than sorry and speaking to your vet early.